Well, I am going to have one of these galletas that you offered me. How do you say galleta in Italian? Do you remember?
What's galleta?
Galleta, or galleta, or galleta. Does that ring any bells?
No.
Well, I'll bet you it's, or how about biscotti?
Oh, yeah, biscotti, yeah.
So that's what this would be.
Yeah, biscotti, yeah.
The word for cracker and biscuit and cookie can be the same word in some languages.
You know, my sister remembered a lot. My brother, my older brother, who's 92 and still alive in New York, I mean, he could still remember Italian.
Let's hear some words and phrases you still remember.
State zitto. Do you know what it means? Be quiet. It means be quiet, but that's the dialect. I don't know the correct way to say it, you know, but that's what, when my mother wanted us to be quiet, she'd say, state zitto, be quiet, you know, when we were being noisy.
Come here.
Vieni qui.
Oh, okay. Ven acá en español, or ven aquí. Good morning.
Oh, yeah, what did I used to say? Buonanotte is night. Buongiorno, good day.
Mm-hmm.
Good day.
It's coming back,
yeah,
isn't it?
A little bit comes back, yeah. Well, in fact, that's the first thing I'd say to them when I'd see them. Buongiorno, signora.
When you saw who?
Well, the neighbor lady, in fact, the one who lived right next door to us.
Did the day come when your father regretted that you lost so much of the language?
No. Never. He was strictly... My mother did, though. She just raised all kinds of heck with me. She said, what's the matter with you that you can't remember? I says, well, I have no one to talk to. There's no one there. I didn't know one Italian person when I moved here. There was just a lot of rudiments. But I learned a few German words.
So when you were in high school and World War II was breaking out, Italian was taken out of the school.
Was, yes.
And was German?
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
It was. But I went to Forest Hills High School in New York. And I remember that day just like it was yesterday. In fact, today is December 7th, and it was, I think, the next day.
Let's say what day this is.
What today is?
The day that Japan
attacked Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
I remember that. And it was the next day we were in the lunchroom, and I remember President Roosevelt saying, we have declared war because the Japanese have bombed Pearl Harbor. I remember that.
How soon was German and how soon was Italian taken out?
That I don't remember.
During the middle of the year?
I don't remember that, but I think it was. I really think it was.
And then we put it back in and try to get people to learn it. It doesn't make any sense.
I don't know, because that was in December, and it was, you might say, close to the end of a semester. You know, January semester. So I really don't remember. That was 1941. And this is it's 2008.
And we are talking about the Italian language, which would be like a cousin to Spanish, wouldn't you say? Kind of like a cousin?
Oh, well, I took Spanish for 1 year. And I remember the teacher saying, you talk Spanish with an Italian accent. That's what she said to me. But I don't remember much about it. I only took it. Maybe that's why I switched. I had to take a language, and I took Spanish.
You married a man who spoke some German? I mean, Uncle Hubert was 100% German. His grandfather came here around, before the Civil War, fought in the Civil War, and then had a son named Leonard. Bernard Riedemann had a son named Leonard, right? And then Leonard had a son named my Uncle Hubert.
My husband.
Did Uncle Hubert speak German? Who in his family spoke German? My mother did not. She remembers that when her parents didn't want her to understand, they'd speak German.
That's what they did to me, you know. When they didn't want us to understand, they'd speak Italian. And it's fast.
That's what your parents did, you mean?
Yes, but I'm saying, as far as the German, Grandma Riedemann, I remember, she spoke some German. But she would always say to her husband, who was Leonard, I'm high German, you're low German. Now, what that meant, I don't know.
Two different German dialects?
Yes, from different parts of Germany.
One of my bilingual brothers told me yesterday that he remembered Grandma Riedemann speaking German all the time. But he's 6 years older than I am. I don't remember it. On the other hand, one of my cousins, Joe, who is my age, he said that Grandma Riedemann lived with them for quite some time and taught him lots of German. Well, anyway.
Well, that I can't.
Uncle Hubert spoke.
But I know there's something I have to tell you, that when he was, during the war, he was accredited with killing 8 Germans with a mortar. He was a mortar man.
You're talking about your husband,
my husband in World War II, and he was so sorry. I mean, he felt so bad about it because he felt that was his people. People's country, yes. And he just felt very bad about it, but it was a necessity.
You know, that's a very nice little number, but I'm quite sure that since they were in one of the worst battles in history, the Battle of the Bulge, he and my father, they killed a lot more than 8 people apiece. As I understand it, these numbers were really big numbers.
Well, but he had one mortar that killed the 8 of them.
Oh, you mean at one time?
Yes, one time.
I see.
One time he was accredited with that, and he felt so bad about that, always.
So for the years after that, he felt bad about it. Now, this is an interesting part of why we ought to be talking about things, because not only is language lost over the years as people move from one area to another, but the lifestyle, the culture is also lost. And yet, people for generations can look back to what we call the old country and say, boy, I'd like to go back there, or I wish I still knew the language, or I wish I knew something about that place. A lot of people want to go back. That's why so many people do their genealogies, trying to go back to their roots, right?
Right.
So, Uncle Hubert, because his grandpa, my great-grandpa, came over here, he and I were born and grew up here, but it also means that the people that were in Germany came over here. By the way, many of them went to South America and they spoke Spanish, so many of us Germans ended up speaking Spanish down in South America, and many of us ended up speaking English up here, and some ended up with both, like my family. So, over the years then, the Germans who were being brought up in this country went to war, a very savage war, against the land of their people. Or to say, they went to war against the people who remained in Germany. And this is a very odd thing, isn't it? How people can move around and they become patriotic Americans, but they're Germans also, and they're fighting Germans. What did Uncle Hubert, your husband, say about this over the years? Did he talk about it much, or was it, for instance, my father spoke very little of this stuff.
They didn't like to talk about the war, but there is, when you're talking about things, let me tell you this.
Well, let me just say, when the veterans get together, they talk about everything.
Yeah. They used to go to a meeting, of the 101st Airborne. Mm-hmm. When we lived in New York, Hubert did go. But in New York at that time, they had you might say, a German section. All Germans lived there. Another section, all Italians lived. And another one, the Irish lived. They talk about melting point, but yet when those people came, they did stick together and stay with their own language people.
Was that a problem?
Not really. We were strictly Italian. I didn't even know there were other people. Here I lived in New York, a big city, but yet this was my world.